Next, I was delighted when I reached out to a colleague of mine from Western New York to talk about, my passion for technology transfer and hearings that I wanted to do. She's the chair of Science and Technology Task Force, Francine Del Monte.
Thank you, Mark. The PSA test for prostate cancer was developed at Roswell Park Cancer Institute in Buffalo. The New York State holds the patent for that PSA test, but the manufacturing of that test happens elsewhere outside of New York State. A professor at Niagara University is developing a new test to detect breast cancer that's much less invasive than what exists right now in major hospitals and universities. She'd like to be able to develop that test and not only get a patent for that test, but also have it manufactured here in New York State. Right now, as she goes through this process, she won't be in the position of doing that because seed capital funding doesn't exist for scientists like herself to bring a product out of the university setting and put it into a more commercialized development. The one consistent theme that Assemblyman Alessi and I heard as we conducted as we conducted forums across the state was that New York State is so deficient in having seed capital available to people who are working in the university settings, who are developing these new tests, who are developing new products, but need the seed capital once they leave that university setting to be able to manufacture those products here in New York State. We were both excited in January when Governor Paterson unveiled his budget, and part of that budget included $25 million for a new seed technology fund. And we're equally disappointed, as are the rest of our colleagues here today, that that has now been removed. New York State can't continue to be last amongst so many other states in offering opportunities to all the intellectual capital that is going on in our universities. We make tremendous investments in our university system. We have great minds in these university systems, but we're not allowing them to take what they're developing outside that setting and make it work for New Yorkers all across the state. Assemblyman Morelli spoke to the need to have upstate especially realize the potential that the seed fund could have for creating new job opportunities in our districts. I see the great things and the great investment that we've made in Buffalo along the medical corridor and the potential that that has to create thousands of jobs. We have the university system, we have the great minds, we just need to give them the opportunity through a minimum of funding when you think about it. This is so small in comparison to other states and what they're offering their entrepreneurs that it's almost embarrassing. So I stand here with all my colleagues, and I want to thank Assemblyman Alessi especially for bringing me in early in the stage to discuss this issue, which is so important to New Yorkers statewide. And I'm hoping that this gathering here today and the lateness in the budget gives us an opportunity to perhaps bring this funding back into the final budget process. So thank you for being here and listening to us. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Actually, just to reminisce a bit, I don't think we would be here at this point without Assemblywoman Del Monte. When I reached out to her, I was just asking for permission to go to her district and do a roundtable with my very small committee without staff. I was the little train that could, and she agreed to join up with me because of her task force, and she has a much better staff in terms of expertise in this area. And a lot of the bills and a lot of our momentum came off of that partnership, so I can't thank her enough. The next woman that I'm going to bring up has really focused on this issue to the point where even in our own house, when this seed funding was in jeopardy, she was the one that corralled us to make sure that we put seed funding for tech transfer in the Assembly budget, and that is Assemblywoman Donna Lepardo.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks to all my colleagues for being here. I have a similar story to the one that Assemblywoman Del Monte just shared. I represent the southern tier part of the state, and just to give you an idea of what came out of that area when we had the man landed on the moon, that computer system was invented in Endicott, New York by IBM, and the flight simulation system that they used was also invented by Link Aviation. And the first picture that was taken when they stepped off the moon was developed with film that was made in my area as well by Anatech, or ANSCO at the time. Right now, I'm here to share the story of a Francesco Liberti. In a recent story in my paper, local entrepreneurs struggle for capital to grow companies. This gentleman found himself in such a situation, it was described here, where he wound up selling the rights, the Asian rights to his product for a mere $500,000. It's a fiber optic cable assembly that has great promise. But now, because of the failure of capital being available to him, he is now unable to reap the benefits of this product in all of the Asian market, and he's left with the United States and Europe, of course. Just to give you an idea of how much money we're talking about to help capitalize this type of invention. The phrase I'd like to add to the mix is valley of death. Inventors and developers across the state describe a valley of death between the place where they are inventing something and the part where it can go for commercialization. And that's the place where they need that seed money to develop a prototype. And that's what Mr. Liberti received his funding to do, to simply develop the prototype. And we are committed to making sure that New York State is, going forward, will be able to share the same types of stories that I initially shared about that moon landing, because we have it all available to us. We shouldn't be selling it to people overseas. Thank you.
Also like to bring up someone that has been so passionate about this issue. He's traveled to my district a number of times to tour. He didn't just stay in his own backyard, but he wanted to see what Brookhaven National Lab does and SUNY Stony Brook does as part of his chairmanship of university and industry cooperation, and it's Assemblyman Dennis Gabrizak.
Thank you, Mark. As Mark mentioned, as chair of the Industry University Task Force, I had the opportunity to go out and visit a number of sites, a number of universities. I've been to RPI, I've been to Stony Brook, Brookhaven, UB, and others, to see exactly the fine work that they're doing, the research that they're working on in conjunction with businesses throughout the state, and the fine products that they're working on and developing. And what's so important right now is the fact that when the governor submitted his budget with the $25 million, which really, in terms of the overall budget, is a very small amount, but it means so much to these companies to have the ability to take an idea and a product that they come up with to be able to get that to market. Now is not the time to disinvest in economic development in New York State. We know we face a tough budget situation, but we also know that we need to make investment. We need to keep our businesses that are here strong. We need to give them the incentive to keep going. And we need to invest in helping small businesses. The innovation technology that exists out there, we need to have the ability to compete with other states, because those businesses, those innovation, that technology that is being developed is going to create the firms that are going to grow in the future. They're going to create more jobs. So as Assemblymember Lepardo talked about the Valley of Death, we need to have that money reinstored back into the budget to make sure that we can encourage and make sure that these small companies can continue to grow and develop and create jobs.